Good evening. Welcome to MGM Motors Vodcast episode 6 or 7. It's our weekly waffle talking about the week's topics that we've seen or whatever we've chosen this week. So this week, as seems to be a lot at the moment, there's some news going on. So this week, electric cars and the future is what we're going to talk about, and what the future of motoring looks like. And for petrol heads like me and Macca, the end is inevitable, I think is probably the phrase used. I've coined that phrase. That's from the Top Gun Maverick movie, and we've seen that in the trailers, which we're looking forward to. And I'm hoping that the answer is the same, but not today, sort of thing, and we might live to survive another day.
Yeah, is it really going to be the end? Really?
Well, this is why we're talking about this today. So today is Wednesday, the 16th of February, and late last night, Jaguar Land Rover launched or announced.
It's Tuesday.
I'm wishing the week away already, but it's Tuesday, the 16th of February. Last night, 10 o'clock, Jaguar Land Rover even announced that from 2025, all Jaguars going to be electric. Which, when you look at their range, and I haven't read how it's affecting Land Rover and what's happening there, but when you look at what they make at the moment, that's a real shift, a real left. If you look at, you've got the F-Type R V8. You've got, I think they've stopped making the V6 now, but you had the F-Type 300, which was the 2-litre 300 horsepower one. You had obviously the XFR, which was the 5-litre supercharger.
Yeah.
The XE or Project X, which had the
V8 engine in as well, didn't it?
I don't think many people bought it, but ridiculous.
No, because it was over $100,000 for a Jag Mondeo. Why would you?
It was an XE, but it wasn't a Mondeo because it's separate from Ford. But yes, I take your point. It was that kind of size. Well, it's completely different running with that kind of size. But there was that, and then what else? What else did Jag make? The I-Pace is
the I-Pace, which is obviously the full electric. They've got the E-Pace, which is the E-Pace, which is the hybrid, and then they've got the F-Pace.
So I think you can get the E-Pace and the F-Pace in hybrid format, but not full EV. So the only full EV at the moment is the I-Pace. But clearly, what they have seen is that from 2030, we know that the sale of internal combustion engines in the UK will be banned. So we won't be getting petrol cars if that stays as it is at that date, and we'll either be going to electric. I think even hybrids has proposed that there is a ban on selling those from 2035. So that sounds like a long way away, but it's only
not
14 years. It's not. And this is. I've always maintained, and I've said this to you before, I would have an electric car as long as I could keep my toy.
Yeah.
So, if
I think you're in a position, you personally are in a position where that can happen because of your job. So potentially, let's say the world goes back to normal, you're potentially in a position where you can have a company car. You will get an electric vehicle on that company car scheme.
If I went back to doing the mileage I was doing, you're right, I would qualify for a company car.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening for a lot of people. But I still maintain, even for my daily use, I would probably have something the same sort of size as my Clio if they did something like that, which Tesla don't do anything that small.
So realistically, you're looking at something like the Renault 5 proposed,
or the i3.
Like the Honda or the i3, which I think BMW are talking about pulling. They've already pulled the i8. I think they might be pulling the i3.
Well, the i8 was a bit different because that was a hybrid. That had a little 3-cylinder engine in the back. Mm-hmm. The i3, I think they've just facelifted. So I don't know. I know they've got another concept of an electric 4 Series coming. So there's loads of concepts, and it's moving
exactly.
Forward.
Let's look at where electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. Let's look how far they've come from the original Prius.
Well, I think that. So the first full electric car that I remember, because hybrid's very different. I think I'd have a hybrid. Not got a problem with a hybrid at all. In the
I'd
sense,
have a P1.
Well, yeah, P1, yeah. But in the sense that for going up and down the motorway for work, being Mr. Boring commuter man, I'd happily have something like a Corolla. I know they don't make it now, but I don't know that much about them. But something like a Toyota Auris that they used to do in a hybrid format, something like that. I couldn't bring myself to drive a Prius, but you know, the Auris was mechanically the same and just looked a little bit more normal. But,
True.
Ultimately, you look at that and a hybrid. I think that's it. That's an easy one. There's no argument against having a hybrid, but the simple fact of the matter is, you cannot get range anxiety in a hybrid.
No, you can't.
You know, you are the worst. You are the worst when you're allowed to come around here for going, oh, where's the phone charger? Where's the phone charger?
Oh, mate, I'm terrible. If my phone battery dies or it gets low, I'm clucking like a crackhead. So can you imagine what I'd be like in an electric car?
Exactly my point. And that for me is still the problem with electric. And I think this is where you know, I watched a video that Petrol Ped, and he's got another mention this week. So I'm liking his stuff at the moment, but he had the Audi e-tron, don't know which model it was. Mm-hmm. He had it on a couple of week test that he used. And he did a 250-mile journey, had to plan in a charge stop on the way. Mm-hmm. And on the way there, he managed to get a Shell charger, charged it for 50 minutes. So, yeah, a bit of a stop compared to if you had to fill your tank. But decent break if you're doing that sort of journey out of the car is not a bad thing, but you've got to plan it in. But, you know, he did that and he was back up at, I think it was 80%, plenty of juice to carry on the rest of his journey.
Yeah.
On the way back, he needed to stop for another charge. And he went to somewhere, Eco City or whatever. And the problem isn't just that the infrastructure isn't there as yet.
No, it's not.
Also that even where the chargers are, they don't always work. So he's pulled up at one charger, plugged it in, not worked. He's waited half an hour and it's not done anything.
There's another problem with the charge. It's not necessarily that they don't work. It's not necessarily the right type because there's two types of chargers at the minute, isn't there?
There's
two different. Is it three? I knew there was more than one. So there isn't, you know, you've got a petrol car. I've got a petrol car. We go to a petrol station. It's a universal thing. You put petrol in. They need to be, when you're talking infrastructure, the manufacturers and the infrastructure, they need to make the plug universal.
I don't think it's the plug. I think the plug's the same. I think the plug's the same across. I don't know enough about it. I may be wrong, but I think the plug's the same. But I think it's more about how much power they put out. So
there's different plugs.
Well, certainly at this Shell one that he went to on the way up, there were 3 charging points, and one of them that they offered was called CCS, which I think was 50 kilowatts or 50 watts, so it could charge it faster than a normal one.
It's like Tesla do the fast charging, don't they? They'll give you
they call it supercharging.
Is it supercharging? They'll give you full charge in 45 minutes.
Yeah, so that's where Tesla, and the problem is I hate Tesla because as a tool for getting from A to B and doing what a car needs to do for a non-car person, I get it. But I get it completely. But I just look at them and think, who the hell's designed that? They're
mate, they just look like really bad Mark 1 Mondeos.
They just don't do anything for me. That, you know, I think, and I've said this before, the big thing for a car for me has always been, even with my diesels, it's the sound that they make, the noise that they make. That for me is the. But that's where I've said, well, okay, on a daily basis, if I was having to drive somewhere and I had the range to do it and the infrastructure was in place, Skegness is my furthest area I have to drive to, or used to have to drive to for work.
Yeah.
I don't know where the charging points are because I've never had to look, but I certainly haven't seen loads of them dotted around.
Let's be fair, your run to the Skegness, it's not. I wouldn't say there'd be many, if any.
I don't know. I've never looked it up. But this Audi that Petrol Ped had, the range, because of how cold it was that he was getting out of a full charge on it, was 185 miles.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
But that gets you there. Perfect, not a problem on there. Now, if there's no charging site nearby, I've got to hope I can get it into the branch car park.
And plug an extension lead.
Get an extension lead out the window to charge it up.
Exactly.
And then I've got to be there 7 hours to get enough charge, because that's only then charging up whatever comes out the mains plug. It's much slower to charge.
Of course it is.
So, you know, there's limitations to it. And that's why I don't think the full switch over. That's why I think this 2030 date of, right, we're not selling any more, gives them 10 years to get the infrastructure there. Because I think to get the grid up.
Exactly. I think that's the issue. And I listened to a podcast a little while ago with Chris Harris, and someone quite high up in the in National Grid. He's dealing with the infrastructure, and what they're saying is the actual grid as it stands can cope with more charges. Okay, that's not the problem. It's actually getting companies to want to put charges in.
Yeah.
That's where the issues lie at the minute, because obviously the cost implications and so on. And also what they talked about, and I think if they do this, it makes the cost, because look, let's be fair, the cost of an electric car is a lot. It's expensive. So I think
if you're looking at Teslas and stuff, yeah, it is, you're right.
If you're looking at any, e-tron is going to be scandalous money. The Teslas are scandalous money.
I don't think it will be that different to a high end of the A7, for example. I don't think it will be. That's
fine, but if the whole country is going electric, not everyone can afford a high end A7.
No, but that's where it's going to filter down to the smaller cars. You've already got the Golf E. I don't know if Audi have done the A3 electric.
And how much is that? How much is the Golf E?
But
I bet it's the same price, same type of money as the Golf R.
But you're forgetting one. Yeah, but it's not marketing the same thing. And you're also forgetting one thing that is still there at the minute. There is still a government grant if you buy an electric car.
Yeah, it's five.
Price by $5,000.
$5,000. So,
yeah, but that
it's still a lot of money. Anyway,
but when you look at a PCP, that discount, I don't know how it works. I've never looked at it, but I would assume that discount, that brings the purchase price of the car down, brings the monthlies of the car down, and let's talk about the people that something like that would be ideal for. Mrs. Mackenzie Senior, I'm sure will be quite happy with an electric car because she don't care if it makes a noise.
You're very, very right there, mate. To be fair, they're already talking about changing what they've got to a hybrid anyway. So
that's what I mean. My mum and dad wouldn't care if it had the range, and that
exactly.
But the big problem I have with it at the moment isn't just that. It's that everyone's going, oh, my green electric car, blah blah.
They're not that green. Let's be fair, they're not that green.
When you look at the moment, the problem is you look at how much lithium mining has to go on to manufacture these batteries.
Exactly.
And the carbon footprint of mining that and the effect that has on the planet.
Yeah.
And where a lot of that happens and where the batteries are then manufactured, you've then got to put all that lithium onto a ship and move that across the world and things like that.
And what does the diesel run on? What does the ship run on? Is it diesel probably?
It probably is. But I think the thing with that is the more people that switch over to it, the bigger the offset becomes, sort of thing.
Exactly.
So, it's whilst at the minute, all that effect is a massively negative carbon footprint. Negative being it's larger rather than a neutral or actual negative footprint.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the more people that are buying these cars, the more it offsets. So I think there is a place. I've always said, do you know what? If I'm driving up a motorway, as long as the car's comfortable, I'm warm, I've got a decent sat nav, I've got the radio, I'm happy. I ain't bothered if it's making noise. What I want is when it comes to Saturday or Friday afternoon and I leave the office, I want to either, if it's nice and sunny, drop the top like we've got on the 4 Series, or I want to hear the pops and bangs of a nutty exhaust on the end.
Exactly, and I don't think they're never going to stop petrol cars. I.e., they'll stop making them, and you'll still be able to have them. The difference will be cost implication. Parts will go through the roof. Servicing will go through the roof. Fuel pricing will go through the roof. I think that's where it will change in that respect. Yeah.
So, and I think if people are doing mileage at that point, then they'll switch over to the electric car.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will.
I think in reality, I'm not that bothered because
no, you're not doing the mileage, and it literally is a toy.
No, but what I'm saying is, I'll keep it as a toy. So the fuel, I don't worry about the fuel costs on the M2 at the minute. I don't worry about it because the day I start worrying about it,
it's the day you sell it.
It's the day I get rid of it because it's never going to be good on fuel. It's a flipping.
You don't buy a car. You don't buy a car like that to be fuel economy.
Well, no, exactly. So I think for that, like I say, you can put your servicing prices up, you can put your fuel prices up. I'm not that bothered because it's going to be a toy. It's going to be something that comes out to be used when the weather's nice, when I can actually go and enjoy it.
Exactly.
Not that's my everyday car.
Exactly. But the podcast that I was listening to, what they're talking about doing, or a potential of what's going to happen is sort of cars will be sold like a phone tariff.
Yeah.
So you have an upfront fee, so that'll be your deposit of a couple of grand, say, and then you'll have a monthly cost. So similar to buying a car now, but what that monthly cost will include is it include obviously the car. It'll also include your charging and everything else like that around it, and how much kilowattage you need a month or a week, and you'll pay that. Obviously, if you need to go over, you'll have to top it up. But I think if they
I guess
do
what
that,
you're doing is that's like setting the PCP mileage, isn't it? But
yeah,
instead of doing
exactly.
mileage,
That's
just setting
it's
the-
how much. So I need 1,000 kilowatts or whatever it'll be, sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing as a PCP, but I think everything will be included. And I think by doing that, it makes it more accessible by putting it as a whole package rather than the way it is at the minute.
Yeah, I get what you said. I think if you look back at this petrol pen video I watched, he charged it for an hour, and I'm sure he got 80% battery, and he was quite low when he got in there.
Yeah,
that cost 17 quid.
Exactly.
So when you look at that, and that was at a petrol station, so obviously charging it at home costs nowhere near that. I don't.
No,
think. It's far cheaper to charge at home. But even when you look at that and go, okay, 17 quid's virtually got him, let's say, another 150 miles.
Yeah.
Well, if you put 20 quid in your 320D, what's that getting you mileage wise?
20 quid's probably getting me 150 to 200.
Probably getting you about the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not adversely. It's not the charging that's the problem. It's
the time. It's the length. For me,
Yeah.
it's the length of time. Like let's say I'm going to Carlisle to play golf. One, I don't want to stop on the way up. Two, if I've got to stop on the way up, I don't want to be stopping for an hour. It's the last thing I want. So I think for electric cars to be properly successful, the ranges need to be over 300 miles. The charges need to be quicker, and the actual physical cost of the car needs to be less.
Well, I don't think the cost of the car will necessarily come down until the price of the technology comes down. It's a bit like,
which, let's be fair, should be coming down now.
Well, it's still relatively new technology, isn't it? If you think back to when I moved into Keenan Drive, okay, we did not have those, these really thin TVs that we've got. We didn't have those then. We still had the big bleeding boxes. Because I remember a friend of ours, I remember telling you about this, couldn't afford to buy one of the first flat screens. So we actually hollowed out his chimney and sunk the TV in it. If you remember,
that's right. Yeah. That's right.
So you kind of look at it and go, it's still new technology and it's evolving all the time. And
it is.
I think to start seeing it come down, it's, the hybrids is where the price has already started to come down a bit.
Yeah. It is.
That's coming into more smaller cars and things like that.
Well, I don't think there's a brand now that doesn't have a hybrid.
No, you're probably right. But your Vauxhall Corsa now, don't forget that's full EV,
fully electric. But again, how much is it? It's massive money.
I can't remember how much it was, but
I think they're about 38, 40 grand.
No, I think it was about 30 grand from memory. I think it was about. I tell you what. Whilst I'm talking, I will pull up the Vauxhall site because I think from watching it on it was on Top Gear, wasn't it, that they had that on?
Yeah,
because they had the Mini and that Honda thing.
That's right. Yeah.
So the all new Corsa it's talking about, electric. Let's have a look at that. So the all new Corsa electric from 26.5.
Okay.
So
that's not too bad.
Don't get me wrong, it's still dear for a Corsa. But it's, ultimately, the 80% rapid charge in 30 minutes.
Where?
So, that's the whole point, isn't it? I don't know enough about the charging stations
exactly
that are there. But and you look at that again, that's got a 50 kilowatt lithium ion battery, 50 kilowatt hour. I don't know enough how this converts. But
I don't know the conversion.
Even so, that car, that'd be perfect for your mum and dad. Something
it
like
would
that.
Be. Yeah, it would.
Because nipping it, that'd be perfect for my mum. Nip it. She's got a little Citroen C1, which we will be cleaning up because it's not had a proper wash in 9-10 years old. It is.
No, yeah.
Do you know how many miles it did last year?
About 1,000.
Oh, you're flipping it. Weren't that high? 159 miles. Right?
That's ridiculous.
Because, ultimately, it's a little city car. They don't go very far. And if they do tend to do a longer journey,
it'll be one of the Saabs.
Car because they're putting something in or out of it or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know,
let's be fair. Let's talk about electric vehicles like we have been. we don't want to know. Let's talk how fun they're going to be in comparison to a petrol car. So let's look at your M2. Let's look at your 430. You can go in that. You can have fun. It'll put a smile on your face. You get in the M2. You can get silly.
I had it in MDM mode last night. That put a massive smile on my face.
There you go. You can get silly in it. Now, let's get into, I don't know, let's get into a Tesla Model 3. Yes, it's gonna piss all over you from the lights up to probably 100 miles an hour. But is it fun? Is it gonna give you the same driving experience?
I don't know is the honest answer. I mean, obviously they had it on that 24-hour test on Top Gear. Harris had the 330e. Who had the Tesla? Was it Paddy?
Paddy had the Tesla and
Flintoff had that Volvo.
Flintoff had the Volvo, which out of the three, and
that's
I'm
the one I'd have had.
Yeah, I'm a massive BMW nut, as are you, but I would have been in the Volvo. Yeah. But again, what surprises me, so the Tesla was what, 500 horsepower?
Yeah.
The Volvo was about 460. The BMW was 280 horsepower.
Yeah.
What is that all about? You know, it's just, I think, but again, they're hybrids. Well, the Tesla was full electric, but the BMW was a hybrid. It wasn't a full electric.
No, it wasn't. And the power figure was nowhere near what the other two were. I think for me, yes, are they going to be fun? Just having something that's 500 horsepower, it's going to be a fun car. But it's how it delivers the power,
Exactly.
It's just an instant.
It's like I can't even describe what it's like, because it's literally on off. It's like flicking a switch. Power's there, power's not. Power's there, power's not.
I think I can kind of give a bit of comparison here. So in my 430 is 330 horsepower because it's been mapped, and its torque figure is about 500 foot-pound of torque.
Yeah.
So it's not that much down on the M2.
No.
But because it's diesel, all the torque is there right from tick over.
Yeah, it's a smoother power.
So it's a very smooth power band, in the same way that a Tesla will be a very smooth power band right from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
And it's literally on and gone. Whilst it's a quick car, and whilst I enjoy going out in it and having, taking the roof down and enjoy taking it for a drive, even that, and it isn't down to the extra power of the M2 or anything like that. It is down to the fact that it's a spiky petrol that makes it entertaining. And that's where I think the electric kind of thing isn't going to be in most electric cars. But again, this is another one where Rory Reid has had this week, and okay, I know it's the top end, I know it's expensive, but he's had the Porsche Taycan rear-wheel drive this week. And he posted on his Instagram that was more fun than the new Supra that he's had this week. Now, just to clarify, that is the 2-litre 4-pot Supra. So it is less powerful than the normal B58 powered Supra with 360-ish horsepower, I believe. But even so, that is the first time I think he sat there and said an electric car was more fun than the petrol equivalent. And, this is a respected journalist that's driving cars every day.
But he's not comparing apples to apples. He's comparing apples to apples. It's not.
Of course it is. It's a petrol sports car. It's an electric sports car.
Yeah.
But on price point, okay.
I'm not even talking price point. Let's talk about power output. So that what's the 2-litre? So
probably 2,500 brake, and the Taycan's probably in the 450, 500 mark.
Exactly. So what he should really be doing is putting it up against a 911.
But I don't think
that's and then it's real world. Then it's comparing apples for apples.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the point. I think the point he's making here is that's the first time he's driven an electric car of any sort that has been more fun than a petrol car. That's the point. That's fact. That's the point he's saying. I'm not saying, should you expect a Taycan to be better than a Supra? Well, yeah, I think so. With the extra £100,000 you're probably paying for it.
Exactly.
But that's not what that's not the point he's making. The point he's making is internal combustion engine, front engine, rear wheel drive. On paper, doesn't matter what your power is. On paper, a fun car versus electric, which is normally not considered a fun alternative. It's considered
it's not
a tool and a practical tool.
I 100% see your argument. Yeah, it's a fun electric car because it's rear-wheel drive. It's got the power. But flip it on its head, give the Taycan the same power as the Supra, so they're comparable. Is he having as much fun in the Taycan as he's in the Supra?
I would say that he probably is, and the reason I say that is in real world testing, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How often do you actually get to use 500 horsepower for a sustained period of time?
Yeah, you don't. Of course you don't.
Because I go out in the M2 and I can have a blast around in it. How often can you go full throttle and keep it nailed there for a long period of time?
You can't.
You can't.
You just can't.
So you're not using that upper echelons of the 500, 600 horsepower car.
Of course you're not. I think in real world driving now, anything above 250, 300 horsepower is too much. It just is.
It's not too much. It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. You can't use it. To be fair, anything above sort of 110 brake horsepower is unusable, really.
Well, there's plenty of speed cameras that will catch you out, but yeah,
exactly. You know what I mean. Yeah.
There are places where you can use it, but we shan't reveal those on here because I'll probably stick cameras on it. But you're right. But I just think we're at a point, and I still maintain, and I do not think that EVs are the forward long term. I think they are the way forward for a period.
Well, yeah, they're the way forward.
I think eventually we end up with something like, and I've seen this trial before, where ultimately, almost like if you think of the old Boris bikes that they were called in London, where you literally paid and you picked up a bike and you sold. I could see a city car, an electric city car of
same sort of thing,
working in the same principle.
I think the end result is hydrogen power. As soon as the government can work out how to tax hydrogen and water and whatever, that's the end goal.
It's not so much the taxation that's the problem. You're right, there will be an element of that, there always is. But the bigger problem with it is, and I think that this is where, as usual, patents come into play. And I don't know who has the patent on hydrogen technology.
If anyone, by the way.
No doubt it's probably Shell or BP. Okay, because they normally have. It's a bit like when James Dyson wanted to release the Dyson vacuum cleaner. He actually went to, I think it was Morphy Richards or Electrolux, actually it might have been, and said, "Oh, I want to release this vacuum cleaner." And they said, "Oh, we'll buy the patent off you." And he said, "Are you going to put it in production?" So, "Oh, no," because they make all their money off the bags and the filters and the parts and whatever.
Yeah.
So they wanted to buy that patent to shove it to the bottom of the drawer to take the competition out.
Exactly.
That's exactly where Shell and BP probably are at the moment, in that if we can slow down the hydrogen until the oil gets scarce and I was reading something as well that I think that Shell are actually in production now, putting in production a man-made, no, it's Porsche, a man-made petrol plant, if you like, where they're making petrol so that it becomes carbon neutral. So we won't always be using oil-based petrol. So
the thing is with patents, though, going back to the hydrogen patents don't last forever. Patents only last a period of time, and then that patent ends.
Exactly, and I don't know when these were put into place, but we are starting to see hydrogen stations. James May took a Honda, whatever it was, hydrogen car, and I think it was in California somewhere. And he drove it around, and there were a few hydrogen stations. And they will spring up at the same time.
Yeah,
and
of course.
For me, I think the ideal mix of this is for your mile munching commuter, hydrogen has to be the way, because you will be able to fill it up in the same way as a petrol car.
Yeah.
And this is me thinking logically. The only thing that comes out of the back of a hydrogen car is water.
Yeah.
So instead of having an exhaust pipe spitting water all over the floor, have it spit that into another tank. So you have two tanks in the car. Yeah. And then when you get to the petrol station, you plug a pipe onto one and pipe onto the other, fill one up and drain the other.
Empty the other. Absolutely. Exactly. It's sustainable.
The biggest problem is there's several things. I think the first one is storing hydrogen. I don't think that's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
The second is
pretty volatile.
Hey?
It's pretty volatile.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the Hindenburg disaster. I know we're going back a long time, but that was hydrogen. If you look at the harvesting of hydrogen, you've got to separate hydrogen from all the other components that are there to get pure hydrogen, which I think
the harvest is the hardest part. Harvesting will be the hardest part rather than the storage.
And it's the cost of doing that and then doing it on a big scale volume. The reason the internal combustion engine stayed around as long as it has is, we've mastered how to drill for oil and we've mastered how to refine it. So we've stayed on that path for a long, long time. And we know how to mine lithium and we know how to make batteries. That's why that stayed as long as it has. So, I think we're some way off there, but I think you could end up, and my ideal scenario is that you end up in a position saying, those of you that are doing long mileage, i.e. lorries, lorries, hydrogen powered lorries.
Exactly.
Those of you that are in Birmingham, Manchester, London, wherever it may be, EVs in and around the city.
I think that's the way forward.
Zero emissions, small cost, something like, I wouldn't want one, but something like the G-Wiz sort of city car, but something, I wouldn't want one, but you know what I'm on about? Something that
I do know what you mean.
I do know what you mean. Or nipping in and about London. And then, then you've still got the hybrid space there. And what that ultimately does is that means that less and less people are using petrol.
Yeah.
And that means petrol lasts longer for enthusiasts like me and you. And Jay Leno said this years ago. And if you ever see his car collection, he's got one of the world's
ridiculous. He's got an aircraft hangar.
Oh, so yeah. Awesome collection that he's got. And he said years ago, and I think it was James May that was interviewing him, he said, I'm all for alternative fueled cars because it means that petrol will last longer for me to use these. Now, interestingly, if Porsche pull off this man-made petrol thing that they're doing, and Porsche apparently have said that they will never be a fully electric company, apparently. So
again,
I can see where I'll be going with my next purchase, if that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
911 Turbo S inbound, or GT4 Cayman, I'd be quite happy with. But the Cayman GT4 is a special car. But ultimately, there's that's down the line. But if you are forced down the route of cars are going EV, I know what'll happen, and I'll just hold on to my cars forever because they'll actually become, and as daft as this sounds, this will happen. They will become an investment.
Certain cars will.
I think if they stop making petrol cars, enthusiast cars, you're right. A Ford Mondeo is not going to go. Because the people that are buying a Ford Mondeo, unless it's an ST200 or something like that, are probably pretty much going to go, I'll just have a Tesla. I'm not bothered.
Exactly.
But those cars like the M2,
the M range.
Any M car really.
The M cars, the AMGs, the R lines, the S lines.
But I even think still your Fiesta STs, your lower end of the market, because who's buying them?
Yeah.
Your mum doesn't go out and go, I'll have that Fiesta because it's 180 horsepower and it pops and bangs.
No, you're right.
The people that are buying it are the next generation of boy racers, petrol heads, gearheads, whatever you want to call us. So there's still going to be that interest going. But what will happen is people like my nieces that are very, very young, by the time they are going in cars, they will probably only be experiencing electric vehicles.
By the time they're driving cars.
Well, no, but look.
They're already going in cars, surely.
Yeah, and what I mean is in terms of remembering trips in cars, right?
4 years' time.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the eldest is 2.
So it should be 6.
So it should be 6. So, in reality, do I see them still having the cars that they've got now?
No, but do you see them having electric cars in 6 years?
Potentially, yeah. I can see my sister going down that route. My sister drives a little Renault Clio.
But again, it's that lifestyle. They don't do a lot of mileage, so an electric car would suit. So yeah, you're probably right.
Luke does a fair bit of mileage, so I could see him still wanting to.
But there'd be an electric car in the family.
Yeah. And I think by the time your kids are starting driving or thinking about driving,
I think they'll be doing. They'll be doing lessons in electric cars, mate. To be fair, my 2 will.
Absolutely. And thinking back about what I was saying about hydrogen that I've not thought about, and gas is the other one, isn't it? Natural gas. The buses are already powered by natural gas.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is changing to EVs and things like that are good. But actually, there's other science and other tech going on. So, like I say, I'd like to research more and know more about what is it Porsche doing to create this man-made petrol. Yeah. Now, obviously, Clarkson, Hammond, and May tried to make man-made petrol, apparently planted the wrong seeds, if you remember. made man-made diesel, and they created one of my favourite ever episodes.
That was good. That was good. Where they're dicking around in the combines.
Well, no. What my favourite was off the back of that, which was they did the 24-hour race with the E46.
The 46, yes,
which was powered by the fuel from
it was.
that crop.
It was, yeah.
I found that was a really emotional.
It was
Top Gear for me because
it was.
One of the motorsport companies I used to have the MR2 looked after by Rogue Motorsport. They actually racing Brit car as well.
Yeah.
And I think they were there that season. But Rogue had done quite a bit with Top Gear, but they didn't do that one with them. But yeah, I mean the way they kept that car, and it had been a Repmobile. I think it was probably over 200,000 miles.
Yeah, it did a lot of miles.
And they kept it going and got it through the race and beat the other 330D. It was just a very fitting use of that fuel, I think.
Yeah, so, yeah, you're right.
Do you, if you create, and this is the other thing, if you create man-made fuel that is carbon neutral, then, how does that fare against an EV where you've had to mine lithium?
Something we'll find out in probably the next 15 years.
Yeah, I think there's a long way to go to see, and let's be honest, me and you will sit here and go, oh, I don't want an electric car, I want a car that starts up and tells me it's on by making a noise. Exactly. But the simple fact of the matter that we have to remember here, and as much as I hate it, is if the world didn't evolve and didn't change, me and you would be going out tomorrow to work
with a club
in a horse and cart.
We wouldn't even be there, mate.
Or we'd be sitting in our cave waiting to see what dinner had been caught.
That's exactly where
the world evolves, the world changes, and I think we've talked about old cars before. We talked about the Fast and Furious cars, which are now quite old, and you hark back, and cars that for us, for enthusiasts, spark emotions.
They do.
Spark memories. The smell of the racetrack is something you cannot recreate.
And I just don't think any electric car, any hydrogen car, even your Porsche Taycans, let's go the quick, silly ones, I just don't think they're going to spark them emotions like a petrol car does. I just don't.
I think a lot of the emotion that you get from a car or from certain cars, like if I see a Sierra, and it only has to be a 1.8L, has to be a baseline Sierra. That was my dad's first company car, and I remember a trip around the Lake District where he thought he was flipping hiking Cova Line and drifting. And I don't remember the sound that car made. I remember giggling in the car with my dad.
Yeah.
So it's it depends what the emotion is that's being triggered. If it's a certain trip, the noise doesn't matter. But it's certain. I remember my first time at Donington Park. I was 6 years old. No, I wasn't. I was 12 years old. It was my sister's 6th birthday that me and my dad missed to go and watch his mate racing Alfa Romeos. I'd never smelt the oil and the burnt fuel at the racetrack.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, those things are, emotional. And I think the Taycans will, because it will be journeys you go on and it will be things that you do in the car. But it's us being stuck in the old times, and we have to kind of accept that it's here and it's not going anywhere. What I hope it allows us to do is keep the petrol stuff going as long as we can. And like they do in the States, how many old cars you see in the States, and that's probably the point to wrap it up on, isn't it? Is that whilst new cars and new tech and electronics is here, the old boys in America are still running Impalas from the 60s and Chevy Bel Airs from the 60s, and I'll probably still be running my BMW M2 in 30 years' time. So I think that wraps it up. That EVs are here to stay. Hydrogen is probably coming as well. The future is now. But actually, that doesn't mean we have to get rid of the past and throw it all in the bin.
Absolutely.
Here for some time.
Absolutely.
So on that, what are your thoughts? Any of you got electric cars?
Stick your comments down below.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Take care. Bye bye.